MSW Media.
News with swearing. Daily beans, daily beans. Daily beans, daily beans.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Beans for Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. Today, the New York Times gets a massive trove of smoking gun emails in which Trump associates call the fraudulent electors fake repeatedly. Democratic chairs call for the Trump appointee for the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General Kufari to recuse from the investigation into the deleted Secret Service texts sent during the failed coup attempt. The Washington Post gets a hold of a Department of Justice grand jury subpoena issued to fraudulent electors in Arizona, and a former Mueller prosecutor points out that one of the lines in Trump's January 7th speech that didn't get crossed out could criminally implicate him. I'm Allison Gill.
And I'm Pete Strzok.
Ooh, that's right, everybody. I told you I would have a pretty neat guest host. Hi, Pete.
Hey, Allison, how are you?
I'm doing well. And, you know, of course, as I'm just wrapping up this script, and as we're just finished watching Attorney General Garland on Lester Holt on the NBC Evening News say, look, I told you, I will look at anyone, no matter how high up, that like he just kept repeating this thing that he's been repeating.
Yeah, Trevor Noah said it was the closest he's going to come to Samuel L. Jackson saying, motherfucker, did I stutter? What part did you not understand? That so anyway, yes, that was a good.
May I have some of your beverage to wash down my burger? Yeah, no, and in the spirit of news, we have brand new breaking news that, like I said, just came out after all that went down. And by the way, while I was reading this article, they were on MSNBC talking about Garland's not doing anything. It was kind of funny. So let me just read here the lead from the Washington Post. The headline is, the Justice Department is investigating Trump's actions in January 6th criminal probe. This is the headline we've been waiting for. We've known they've been looking at Trump. They've been asking Oath Keepers and Proud Boys about Trump and communications with Trump. They've been, they connected Donald Trump to the violence at the Capitol in the Tario indictment by saying it was, within hours of his "will be wild" tweet. That's when they all went to work. It could easily be inferred that they were investigating, Trump. He doesn't have a big file with his name on it. Trump being investigated. We knew he was being investigated for the 15 boxes of stuff, or at least the 15 boxes were being investigated. So here's what the Washington Post says. Justice Department is investigating Trump's actions as part of its criminal probe of efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. That's according to 4 people. Now, prosecutors who are questioning witnesses before a federal grand jury, including 2 top aides to Pence, that's Short and Jacob, have asked in recent days about conversations with Trump, his lawyers, and others in his inner circle who sought to substitute Trump allies for certified electors for some of the states Joe Biden won. Now, that's according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Wonder which 2, Pete?
Yeah, it's a mystery for all of us. No, I think this is exactly the kind of thing where people, having worked on the other side, this is the kind of thing you would expect to see when there is an active investigation. And the absence of information like this, the absence of people coming out or their attorneys coming out of the grand jury and trying to, leak information or spin their story with the media, this sort of reporting is very much the sort of indicia of investigative activity that up to this point that a lot of people, and recently including me, have sort of said if they were getting to Trump, you would think you would see things like this. You would think you would see reporting about questions being asked of witnesses in the grand jury. So to me, this clearly indicates that, again, very recently, within the past week or so, the DOJ and the FBI and others started doing very overt type of investigation, which is creating all these ripples that are going out, which are being picked up by the media, and they're from that being picked up by all of us reading this. And I think one more point about that, I think when you get into the point where they're asking detailed questions about Trump, I think it's very reasonable to believe that, this is DOJ's action, but on the investigative side, I think it is probably reasonable to believe that separate and distinct from all the boxes at Mar-a-Lago, there is likely an open investigation into Donald Trump. One, because you are doing investigation, you're gathering information about Trump This isn't the sort of thing where, you're looking at Mark Meadows and you ask a bunch of questions about Trump and you put all those answers into Mark Meadows' investigative file. You want to have something where you are focusing all the things you are gathering and obtaining through information relating to Trump, which it's clear they're asking. You want to put that in one place that relates to Trump. So when you go and you sit there and say, what are we gathering? What do we have? Where are we going? It's all in one centralized spot. So it doesn't say that I saw in this article that there's an FBI or, some IG, somebody having a formal open case on Trump, but I suspect based on this activity, there very likely is.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that you see more toward the end of an investigation when they start doing their overt stuff. Because, if you don't, first of all, you don't do that early on because you don't start at the top or, at the outside hubs of a hub and spoke. You start at, or at the hub. You don't start there. But also because that's when you start to get to the recalcitrant witnesses, the witnesses who want to spin the story. They've been investigating a lot of stuff for the last year or so. It's just not stuff that we hear about. And this DOJ is pretty tight-lipped, I have to say. We don't get any of these leaks coming from the DOJ. These all come from, the only DOJ leaks I've heard is the two prosecutors that were taken aback by Hutchinson's testimony or whatever. And I still question that a little bit. But anyway, it goes on to say, and this is kind of the cool part here. This is the mother lode. This is the money, buried lead. Prosecutors have asked hours of detailed questions about meetings Trump led in December 2020. It's got to be that December 18th meeting, right? And January 2021, probably specifically the January 4th meeting. They've asked about his pressure campaign on Pence to overturn the election, what instructions Trump gave his lawyers and advisors about fake electors and sending electors back to the states. Some of the questions focus directly on the extent of Trump's involvement in the fake elector effort led by his outside lawyers, including Eastman and Rudy, according to probably Mark Short and Greg Jacob. But it's, these people, it says. In addition, investigators in April, I like this part too, received phone records of key officials, the Justice Department, not the January 6th committee, including Meadows. And that's also according to two people familiar with the matter. That effort is another indicator of how expansive the January 6th probe has become, well before the high-profile televised House hearings in June and July on the subject. So,
yeah, and that's so that's 3 months they've had the total records. And you're right. I mean, you do get to a point where all these people, like, none of these folks are going to voluntarily cooperate. Mark Meadows is not going to come in and open his heart and tell everything, that every dirty deed that was done in the White House, nor is Giuliani, nor is Stone or anybody else. So at some point, you've got to find a way to persuade them. Usually the best way to persuade is frequently, criminal charges hanging over their head saying, hey, look, you are facing all these various charges with many, many years in jail. Why don't you consider making a deal with us and we will take some of those charges off the table? And perhaps you should, be a little more cooperative and tell us everything that happened. So, again, this is the kind of thing that you do build up this way, and you build up because when you get to this inner circle, you're not likely to find anybody unless they've had a falling out that is going to want to talk. And for somebody like Trump, who doesn't write anything down, who, eats or flushes whatever little notes he does take on a, with Sharpie on a Post-it note, you've got to have somebody who is inside the meeting who hears whatever it is that he said, because there's unlikely to be a record. So you do need a cooperator if you're going to get to Trump, not 100% necessarily, but it's highly, highly advantageous to do that. And, seeing that it's Mark Meadows there, again, interesting, they source two people. Those could be the same two grand jury witnesses, right? They go in and the AUSAs, the Assistant United States Attorneys are asking them question after question, who did Mark Meadows called you here? Who's this number? What was this call about? What was this call about? So that they knew they had the records. But that's an interesting sign. Last point, though, we know Mark Meadows used Signal. And if he did that well, that is going to be a really, really hard set of data to get a hold of. So unless he left it on his phone.
Oh, you guys can do it. I've seen you do it.
Signal's tough. I mean, they're if you do it right, but I mean, everybody screws it up. Like, I have no doubt Rudy, didn't delete anything. Signal's still on his phone. It's probably got backed up to 17 different iCloud accounts. But if you do it well, if you are, taking care to cover your tracks, it's going to be tough to recover some of that. And again, that's all all in violation of the Federal Records Act, the toothless statute that requires senior administration officials and the president to maintain every record that they create.
Yeah, but coming from the guys who literally just write their crimes out in emails and ask for pardons in emails, I'm not too worried about their understanding how Signal works. But, we'll see. He only had, 18 phones? So one of them's got to have something on
well, half of them got left in Ukraine and they're sitting, being exploited back in Moscow right now. So that's...
Yeah, totally. Now, something I want to tie together here with this Meadows information, because this is just how my brain works. Bust out the murder board for me. It was in April, they got Meadows' phone records, communications, etc. I assume they either got them from Meadows or from a 2703 order, which means you can go and grab people's phone records without telling them. But also, what's important is they didn't make a declination decision on his contempt until June 3rd, over a month after they got a hold of these records, which leads me to believe, which was what I was sort of positing, like they didn't just decline to prosecute him because they didn't have enough evidence, or maybe because they thought it would be a hard case, but there's something else going on here. Navarro got his subpoena from the Department of Justice for his communications with Donald Trump on May 26th and said, fuck you. And so then they arrested him June 3rd. So I think the same thing probably happened with Meadows and Bannon and probably Scavino too. They might have gotten some other DOJ subpoenas about additional information, and whether or not they decided to work with the Department of Justice or at least not tell them to go fuck themselves, maybe just delay or obscure or obfuscate. I think that could be what's going on. And also, Pete, we got stories from the Rolling Stone a couple weeks ago saying that the Trump was preparing to make Meadows the fall guy because he heard he was going to be subject to criminal charges. And I said, well, that stands to reason that the Trump lawyers would probably know better than the rest of us, since he was paying out of $2.2 million, I believe, in total to multiple law firms for January 6 witnesses. Now, they didn't specify whether or not they were for the committee. Some of them were, but these could also be lawyers for witnesses that have been deposed or questioned by a grand jury, federal grand jury. So they were saying that they thought that Meadows could be the great fall guy. And I noticed that Liz Cheney, chair of the 1-6 committee, didn't list him as one of the patsies in the opening of the 8th hearing. And Carol Leonnig went on MSNBC and she's like, just keep your eyes out for some Meadows stuff coming out from the DOJ. I'm not going to say what, but I have a very educated and informed understanding of what's happening. So, I put out this whole thread like some shit's going down with Meadows, and here it is. They've got his phone records. They've had him since April. We could talk about this all day, but speaking of the absolute idiocy of putting your crimes down in writing, in emails, we have some really other interesting breaking news from today. Let's hit the hot notes. Hot notes. All right, big holy shit news today from New York Times. Previously undisclosed emails provide an inside look at the increasingly desperate and often slapdash efforts by advisors to President Donald Trump to reverse his election defeat. Acknowledgments that a key element of their plan, part of this, in these emails, Pete, they use the word fake when talking about the electors over and over again. The dozens of emails among people connected to the Trump campaign, outside advisors, associates of Trump, show particular focus on assembling lists of people who would claim, with no basis, to be electoral college electors on his behalf. They were looking for suckers, right? Kind of like how Trump looks for judges to appoint. It's like, where do I even find these assholes? Well, he found some. In emails reviewed by the Times and authenticated by people who had worked with the Trump campaign at the time, one lawyer involved in the detailed discussions repeatedly used the word fake to refer to the so-called electors who were intended to provide Pence and Trump allies in Congress a rationale for derailing the congressional process of certifying the outcome. And lawyers working on the proposal made clear they knew that the pro-Trump electors they were putting forward are probably illegal. Wouldn't hold up to legal scrutiny, at least. Which I think means illegal, but it's whatever, semantics. Quote, here's one of the emails. We would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress could make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that the fake votes should be counted. That's Jack Willenchick, Phoenix-based lawyer who helped organize the pro-Trump electors in Arizona. Also, I think the lawyer to the cyber ninjas, by the way, and he wrote that in an email on December 8th to none other than Boris Epshteyn, a strategic advisor for the Trump campaign who played a bit of a role in the Mueller investigation, actually. In a follow-up email, Willenchick wrote that alternative votes is probably a better term than fake votes. sending a smiley face emoji with that.
All I can think of is the Monty Python, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Know what I mean?
Nudge,
know
nudge,
what I mean?
Say no more.
Terrible.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Kelly Ward, is she a goer? Does she go? I look forward, Pete, to the report or maybe a speaking indictment that says, it was really the smiley face emoji. If it had been a winky face emoji, that would have definitely put us beyond a reason.
Right. There's no intent behind a winky emoji. It's the smiling. Yeah.
And Pete, the email show participants in the discussions reported details of their activities to Rudy. And in at least one case, who were we just talking about? Mark Meadows. But the main point of contact between the White House and the elector coordinators is Boris Epstein here. The email show, I think it was just Epstein, but I don't know. He's whatever, Boris. The email show he was point of contact for John Eastman, and he not only fielded and passed along to Giuliani the detailed proposal for January 6th prepared by Mr. Eastman, he also handled questions about how to pay Mr. Eastman and made the arrangements for him to visit the White House on January 4th, 2021. Does adding an element of being paid have any impact on the criminality of the crime, or does it not matter really?
I don't think it matters in the context of being paid. I want to think about that. I mean, clearly all the attorneys are going to claim that they are, providing one, that all this is privileged and they shouldn't have to disclose it. There's crime fraud exceptions and a lot of other ways to pierce that. But certainly the non-attorneys like Trump and Meadows can say, and I expect will say, I was told by the attorneys this was legal. I was acting on advice of counsel. Bannon tried to do that, and I think the judge shut him down. But there is, certainly being paid is not as big an issue as it is some of the folks who can claim that they were acting on the advice of their attorneys. Again, to your point of, setting them up as fall guys, I don't know. Meadows, I don't think has that defense, but it'll be interesting to see. Again, it all comes, Meadows is, if I had to pick a guy to flip, it would be Meadows. And it seems like, he is in the middle of all of these things that, all these different events that are coming up in the past few days.
But there's something here, though, that comes a little bit later in the story that tells me that kind of blows holes in that defense. The whole, the people I was listening to were telling me I was just listening to the people I was listening to, because we'll find out later in the story that he was willfully being blind. And there's a little bit of evidence for that, right? Okay, so that's the main point of contact is Epstein. And he also, by the way, handled questions about how to pay Mr. Eastman, as I said, and made the arrangements for Eastman to visit the White House during that January 4th, 2021 meeting, which I'm sure prosecutors asked questions about to Mark Short and Greg Jacob. Keep in mind that meeting was not only attended by Eastman, Pence, and Trump himself, but Short and Jacob, right? And Epstein and Mike Roman coordinated with Jenna Ellis, Bruce Marks, Gary Brown, and Christina Bobb. Bobb is the One America News Network lady, who were all advising Trump. The Times doesn't mention it, but Bobb had emailed Trump's lawyers, including Victoria Toensing and Joe DeGeneva and Rudy, about coordinating the electors, including how to get them into the actual state capitals to certify them. Like, maybe they can sneak in and spend the night, and hide overnight. And if Mike Roman sounds familiar, we reported last week, he was the dude that delivered the fraudulent elector certificates for Wisconsin and Michigan to Rep. Mike Kelly's office, who tried to get Pence's chief of staff to let Ron Johnson hand deliver them to Pence on the day of January 6th. So that's who Roman is. I'm telling you, I have the murder board up and ready to go. The Times reported these emails weren't shared with people like Hirschman and Cipollone. And here's the point I was making to you. These emails were not shared with people like Hirschman and Patsy Baloney, and, which I think is what shows secrecy. I think it goes to that willful blindness. Not that we need it, with these idiots referring to them as fake electors, but goddamn it anyways. I mean, if you're purposefully, I guess it's hard to prove that you're purposefully not sending them to a team of lawyers who would disagree with them, but they know that these lawyers disagree. They kept Pat Cipollone out of several meetings. That has to show some sort of willful blindness, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And there's a pattern of it. I mean, this wasn't just a one-off. They had that December 18th meeting where Giuliani and Sidney Powell and the Overstock guys snuck in with Flynn, and, Cipollone runs in late saying what the hell's going on and trying, will along with Hirschman and gets into shouting arguments. But there is this time and time and time again now we see that, at least Trump and or Meadows, maybe others, are cutting out the, general counsel's office because they don't want somebody, or White House counsel, they don't want somebody coming in who's going to tell them, that's illegal. You're going to go to jail. You shouldn't do that. So, one off, maybe you might make an argument, oh, I didn't know I should. But when you start seeing it again and again and again, in my mind, it clearly, that is something as a prosecutor, I think you could put on it showing a pattern of behavior that it isn't inadvertent, that there's a pattern of behavior that, and then show all the other meetings where White House counsel was present and say, okay, one of these is not like the other. What category of things do you studiously avoid having anybody from the White House counsel's office? And it happens to be all the coup plotting. So
yeah, and Trump even saying to them, like, you're not with me. You guys clearly aren't with me with the whole Rosen and Clark thing. You guys aren't with me. And then, of course, the wonderful Sidney Powell chugging her Diet Dr. Pepper and saying, I think Cipollone set a land speed record trying to get over them. That might come back to bite her in the ass. That's totality of evidence, right?
Yeah. And the interesting thing, too, when you start telling, these names from the Wayback Time Machine, like Victoria Townsend and Joe DeGenova, they were wrapped up with Rudy and they had their stuff seized by SD and the Southern District of New York probably easily a year ago. And this was all they were, work they were doing in the Ukraine. A lot of work allegedly might have been doing for Dmitry Firtash, who's just a absolute no good, allegedly plenty of links to bad players, whether they are organized crime figures. This is all allegedly, whether they are folks within the governments of Russia and Ukraine. So they were already the subject of some scrutiny relating to Rudy up in SDNY. And again, the government got their devices a long time ago. I mean, you probably know the date better than
April,
I do, but I want to say it was like a year ago, more than a year ago.
They got him in April. They got him in April.
T1? Or
2021. April of 2021. And they also got Townsend's phone. And Barbara Cohen, special master, went through all of it and then finally handed over the last of it to Department of Justice this past January.
And so the way that works is, too, once you seize it, you have that whole device. And, we went through this with Hillary Clinton's various devices and all kinds of other cases. You can seize a computer, whether it's a hard drive or a smartphone or whatever it is. But once you have that, frequently what you're allowed to search for within that is much more limited. So it could be like any information relating to event X. And so they may have gotten all these devices. There may be a lot of privileged information. That's what the special master was doing, is going through saying, what is the government allowed to have, and pulling that out. That doesn't stop, although there's some disagreement within the various circuits. In most cases, if once the government has that device in its possession, it doesn't stop, say, the government 8 months later saying, wait a minute, we also think there's coup plotting going on, going to a judge with sufficient probable cause to say, we think these phones that we searched for all this Ukraine nonsense might also have coup plotting information in it. Give us a new warrant to look for that. And then getting that new legal authority then, they'd likely have to re-engage the same or different special master or filter team in any event to go look now for the separate set of data. And so I would not be, I think the last time she gave a report was some time ago, 3 or 4 months ago. So I would not be surprised if there was some question or effort afoot within DOJ to say, okay, we've got all these devices. We initially were looking for all the Lev Parnas, the fraud guarantee, best named company probably in the history of.
Do you know why he did that?
But to say there might also be coup plotting in here. So let's go get a new warrant based on this new problem cause that we have, and to research that for a different purpose to get new information. Again, Rudy being Rudy, God knows what trove of information might be sitting there in all those devices and iCloud backups and everything else the government may have.
Do you know why they called it fraud guarantee?
I don't.
It's because, this is a fun story. It's because Lev Parnas had been convicted of fraud previously. So every time you Googled his name, fraud would come up all over the place. So he decided to name his business Fraud Guarantee so that people would...
It's like lean in. There's that, Lev Parnas, they clearly were, based on that history, leaning in, much like that book from Sheryl Sandberg, where, writing about taking the reality where you find it and just leaning into your life and the challenges. So it didn't, though, end so well for them.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we read our bad podcast reviews because they're funny, but, whatever. Another bit of proof, a possible proof of a cover-up. On December 8th, Willinchek wrote that Kelly Ward, one of the Republicans in Arizona, recommended trying to keep it all under wraps until Congress counts the vote on January 6th, and put in parentheses, so we can try to surprise the Dems and the media with it. And I tend to agree with her. Yeah, I'm sure that's why, considering all the other information that we got about people telling people to keep this on the down low. Willinchek also wrote December 8th, quote, his idea is basically that all of us, Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, etc., have our electors send in their votes, even though the votes aren't legal under federal law because they're not signed by the governor, so that members of Congress can fight about whether they should be counted on January 6th. And this makes me think of that Trump call with Rosen when he commented that he said, hey, why don't you just simply announce an investigation into election fraud and, quote, let me and the congressional Republicans do the rest, right? And Willinchek went on to say, this is good, quote, kind of wild creative. I'm happy to discuss. My comment to him was that I guess there's no harm in it, legally at least, even though he just said it was illegal, i.e. we would be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that fake votes should be counted. And by Christmas Eve, and they put this right at the end of the article, Mr. Eastman seemed to want to harness the power of Trump's millions of supporters. At 8:04 p.m. that night, Christmas Eve, Merry Christmas, Eastman sent Epstein an email that he had received in which a woman implored him to ask Trump to put out what he would like his 74 million followers to do to help. She added, we need to be one voice with laser focus, speaking as 74 million strong. And in his email to Epstein, Eastman wrote, thought I'd forward you this. 74 million strong. Let's figure out a targeted way to deploy them. Rolling thunder, one legislature at a time. The others can see it coming, unquote. And that was just days after Trump sent his will be wild tweet, which seems to me might connect the elector scheme to the violence at the Capitol, which I always knew was probably the case as soon as Pete Navarro said it wasn't. When he was on Ari Melber and said, we didn't need violence, we had the Green Bay sweep, I'm like, that means he needed violence for the Green Bay sweep to work. That's exactly what that statement means. So that's that story, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. And last night, the Washington Post got a hold of the federal grand jury subpoena issued to the Arizona state lawmaker, both Karen Fann and Kelly Townsend, issued by the Department of Justice that we talked a little bit earlier about. Subpoenas were released through a public records request, I think, to Arizona State. Request confirming what's previously been reported about the June demands for records related, quote, to the signing or mailing of any document purporting to be a certificate certifying elector votes in favor of Donald J. Trump and or Mike R. Pence. The documents released Monday cast a wide net for any communications that Fann and Townsend may have had with any member of the executive or legislative branch of the federal government, any representative or agent of Trump or his campaign, or Trump boosters Jenna Ellis, Bernard Kerik, Rudy Giuliani, Boris Epstein, James Troupis, Joe DeGeneva, John Eastman, Joshua Finley, Justin Clark, Kenneth, favorite name, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Cheesebro.
Yeah, you are.
Or I suppose it could be Che Sabro, but I think I prefer Cheesebro. Mike Roman or Victoria Tonsig. Townsend has previously said that as chair of the Elections Committee, she tried to conduct an investigation because legislators, quote, have plenary authority and responsibility to send the correct slate. And because it was in question, we wanted to have an alternate slate in case fraud was discovered and found, unquote. On Monday, she said she had one or two phone calls with Giuliani in December 2020, but no longer has the phone on which those calls were made, much like the Secret Service weeks later. She said she has described the nature of the calls to the FBI.
Yeah, and you were just talking about this. The feds have her phone. And so, like, they would just need a warrant, which seems like they have probable cause here, to go in and get other stuff besides the Ukraine.
Well, so do you read that? Do you read that as she no longer has them because they've been seized by the FBI, or she no longer has them because she's gotten rid of them by bleaching them or smashing them with a hammer, a la, other folks in our...
Well, she doesn't say, but she either smashed it with a hammer or the FBI has
it. Yeah, and clearly she talked. And I wouldn't say, when you, again, this isn't necessarily the case, but when you say, hey, I talked about this to the FBI, that in my mind doesn't mean the grand jury. I think most people when you talk to the FBI, I think about that, you're sitting at the FBI in your office or in your home and you're talking to a couple of agents. It is a very different experience when you go in front of the grand jury, which you're being questioned not by an FBI agent, by the assistant United States attorney. So when I hear her or it being described that she described it to the FBI, this is separate and distinct for any sort of grand jury subpoena. This is her being approached and I assume voluntarily talking to the FBI, whether or not she later went into the grand jury. She clearly now has a subpoena, but whether she did at the time, I don't know. But she continues, quote, "They asked me not to talk about it because of the investigation," Townsend told the Washington Post in an interview. She said it was her impression that FBIs were seeking information about one of Trump's attorneys. The subpoenas are signed by Thomas Wyndham, a federal prosecutor who has been tasked with investigating the false elector scheme. And as you pointed out on Twitter, Allison, everyone mentioned in the emails obtained by the New York Times today appears on these subpoenas.
Yeah, I think that, and that could be a thing, or it's maybe just, it's obvious, right? It's obvious who you need to talk to. We don't necessarily need that. But yeah, the DOJ has said multiple times, I think Garland just said it on Lester Holt, and they've said it in these stories as well, that they're doing their own investigation. It has nothing to do with what the committee's doing. We're ahead of them in some ways. We're behind them in other ways. We need some of their stuff. They need some of our stuff. And that's just the nature of ongoing parallel investigations, I think. So, and if you've been listening to the Beans for the past week, you know how I feel about Kafari. This is the Trump-appointed DHS Office of Inspector General guy. And how I thought it was sus that he shut down a potentially fruitful internal Secret Service probe, the one that had found metadata on 10 phones of the missing text messages. He shut that down in favor of his criminal Inspector General probe into the missing Secret Service text messages. Well, today, two top House Democrats are calling for the Department of Homeland Security IG to recuse himself from the investigation into the Secret Service text messages, saying they've lost confidence after he failed to inform Congress for months that messages around January 6th may have been erased. It took a couple of whistleblowers, actually. House Oversight Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney and House Homeland Security Chairman Benny Thompson, who's also chairs that 1-6 committee we know, wrote a letter to the DHS Inspector General, Kufari, Tuesday, saying your failure to tell Congress the Secret Service wasn't providing records casts serious doubt on your independence and your ability to effectively conduct such an important investigation. Quote, these omissions left Congress in the dark about key developments in this investigation and may have cost investigators precious time to capture the relevant evidence. And you'll remember every time I complain about Kafari, I mention he quashed probes into the use of force against peaceful protesters at Lafayette Square Park and a probe into the danger that Trump posed to the Secret Service with regards to COVID in the last days of his administration. Well, guess what? These Democratic chairs added that this is not the first time Kafari has been unwilling to investigate the agency. Quote, according to reports, Inspector General Kafari previously refused to investigate the Secret Service's actions surrounding excessive use of force, as well as its protocols on protecting officials during the coronavirus pandemic, contradicting recommendations from the DHS OIG career staff. So thank you. Thank you for putting forth my concerns.
Yeah, and what a mess. I mean, some of this, it's really important to understand, like, the timeline involved here. Like, when you're sending, there are these missing text messages, right? And there are a bunch of places those can be. They're obviously going to be potentially on the phones that personnel were using. But then they also can be a number of other places. Like, every phone, like, the government doesn't run its own telecom, right? They use a variety, primarily Verizon and AT&T are the big two, but there are other companies that probably don't have the actual content, but they may keep records of the metadata of text going back and forth. And what's really important here is, one, you have those companies, the Verizon or AT&T. I have heard, although not confirmed, that the Secret Service was using Apple's, in which case, when you're using like an iMessage, that's actually goes through not the carrier, but goes through Apple. So there's another party that might have that data somewhere out in Apple's cloud somewhere in the metadata. Where it becomes really important, a lot of these places, they don't maintain it forever. There are frequently 12 or 18 month sort of automatic deletion windows. So they'll hold this data, this metadata, for a year, maybe 18 months. And after that, it's sort of automatically deleted and it just kind of keeps running whatever the most recent 18 months are. Well, guess what? We're talking January of 2021, the events in question on the 6th. Add 18 months, and where does that get us? That gets us to July 6th, or maybe June, I think July of 2022. And so what happened? That 18 months hit, and then magically a week or two later, Kafari comes forward and says, I want to talk to Congress, I want to brief you. And it's like, oh, by the way, we're at 18 months and 2 weeks where a lot of the stuff may have been deleted. Oh, by the way, I've known about this for 4 months. Had I told you about this in February or March, you would have had potentially a much better chance for these telecoms or people who may only hold it for 18 months. Had you known about it then, you could have reached out with a subpoena saying, maintain all this, produce all this information. So
I always felt like he was involved somehow. I really always felt like he was involved somehow, seriously.
And you need to be an investigator to know that. To do that intentionally is kind of extraordinarily devious and obstruction, frankly. But there's so much that stinks about this just across the board. It's just a mess. And, we'll see. I think there will inevitably.
Well,
there was too much. There's no way those agents on the detail. I mean, look, when you're in it, they're on radios, they're on HTs, they're talking, and we heard some of it in the January 6th committee. They're talking on the radio. But when you get to the point where everybody's in that secure location with Pence, when you go off shift, when you're sitting there and kind of just, you get off shift, you're sitting there, get a drink, go home, whatever it is, talking to your family, your buddies, there inevitably, I am certain, are all kinds of texts saying, holy shit, you wouldn't believe this, what happened, or there's this fight, or I heard from so-and-so this or that or the other thing. To sit there and say that, there aren't text messages, I find that impossible to believe. Maybe not in the heat of the moment when they're trying to get Pence safely out of there, but when it finally decompressing, there's chatter. Guaranteed.
Yeah. And, I put out a tweet. I was like, do you know how hard you have to work to permanently lose these text messages? And you just saying, if the automatic cutoff date for deletion is 18 months and the OIG waits until 18 months and 2 weeks to come in and say, hey, there might be a problem. And but now all the evidence is gone and it's gone. That's what that is. I never liked this guy, never trusted him. And I also have to wonder why on earth in the late fall of 2020, when this Green Bay sweep was being planned, why you would purposefully schedule a migration that could lose data in January of 2021, if knowing that that's when that shit is going to go down.
Yeah,
and I can
see that being just bureaucratic, left hand not talking to the right, and the tech guys don't have any idea what's going on operationally. They're not even thinking that. I mean, they may be thinking like we want to have it done before the inauguration, but they're not thinking the certification of the vote. But when you get to the point where something like that again goes down, and you just had January 6th, why there would not be an immediate sort of across the board sense that we just went through something extraordinary. We need to kind of make sure we hold on to everything, right? Preserve it, because we need a record of it. 50,000 congressional committees are going to ask for it. Investigators in the IG may ask for it. Just keep all this stuff. Not here. Let me turn to my phone. I got to get rid of it. It doesn't add up. Unfortunately,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And I'm glad they're asking him to recuse, and I hope that he does. I hope they find a reliable one.
We'll see. And talk about things that are deleted or crossed out. We already know about the crossed out lines in the January 7th Trump speech that the January 6th committee released on Monday. But former Mueller prosecutor Andrew Weissman points out something that was in Trump's speech as having potential criminal implications. Trump says, I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders, the speech said. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. Well, of course, that's a lie. And the committee released some audio of under oath testimony by Christopher Miller to the committee, who said Trump never ordered any National Guard deployment on or before the attack on the Capitol. Let's listen to that clip.
I want to be clear here that since then, in February of 2021, Mark Meadows said on Fox News that, quote, even in January, that was a given. As many as 10,000 National Guard troops were told to be on the ready by the Secretary of Defense. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
I'm not from my perspective. I was never given any direction or order or knew of any plans of that nature. So I was surprised by seeing that publicly, but I don't know the context or even where it was. We obviously had plans for activating more folks, but that was not anything more than contingency planning. There was no official message traffic or anything of that nature regarding.
So just so we're clear, you did not have 10,000 troops or to be on the ready prior to January 6th.
A non-military person probably could have some sort of weird interpretation, but no, to answer this question, no, that was not part of my plan or the Department of Defense's plan.
And just that the rest of his statement was, quote, that was a direct order from President Trump, and yet here is what we see, all kinds of blame going around, but not a whole lot of accountability. And to be crystal clear, there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops to be on the ready for January 6th. Correct?
No. That's correct. There was no order from the president.
Weissman told Nicole Wallace on Deadline White House that therein lies a cover-up. Now, this is Weissman speaking. One of the things I was struck by was not what was crossed out, but something that was in there, and that was the statement that I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders, quoted Weissman. So, if I was the Justice Department right now, I would view that as a cover-up that Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller and the former President of the United States engaged in to make it seem like the president had not engaged in a coup and he actually was against what happened on January 6th. And that was actually part of the planned speech. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see the department doing, going out and interviewing those people, issuing grand jury subpoenas, and if necessary, putting those people in the grand jury and forcing them to testify and account for their actions. So, I think he's right about that. I think this is something that, it is, the reason is that it's in there, and it's in there because it was pre-planned. And when you have all these events that are contrary to that, all this indication that he didn't provide any direction about the National Guard, quite to the contrary, studiously avoided doing anything, to have the forethought to put in a speech, to keep it in there, clearly shows a premeditation and an awareness of the issue. So I think Andrew's absolutely right. And, to his point, I absolutely agree with it. Put people in the grand jury.
And it's a repeated message. It's a repeated message that he said over and over again. And also, they, because of that, that testimony from Christopher Miller just came out today from the January 6th committee. Somebody pointed out on Twitter, hey, this is weird. Here's Christopher Miller and Kash Patel on Fox News on Hannity saying Trump, that they swore and under oath and testified to the January 6th committee that Trump did order actually 20,000 National Guard troops. That's what they told Fox News. And you play that back to back with the actual under oath testimony, that tells quite a different story, because they asked 3 times and said, to be clear, did Trump ever order any National Guard troops to be deployed either before or on January 6th? Is that correct? And Christopher Miller said, nope, that is correct. That we never got an order like that from the president.
Yeah, remarkable. I mean, think of it. Mark Meadows not telling the truth on Fox News. Who ever could have envisioned something like that ever happening? But I think, again, to the point of a speech isn't just Trump ad-libbing. I mean, we saw, and again, thanks to the January 6th committee, he's sitting there. Somebody has written a speech. So there's 1 or 2 people who have written down what he wants to say, probably after talking to him. He's walking through it. Ivanka's cheering him on and helping him with how to say yesterday and, whatever the case may be. But there are all these people. It isn't just Trump extemporaneously speaking. So when you get to something like this speech, there are multiple people who are involved in this process. And when you start it is hard, if you're going to lie and try and say that didn't happen, to get 4 or 5 people all on the same sheet of music to walk into a grand jury and maintain that lie is really tough, particularly, with a good prosecutor sitting there trying to poke apart the details. You're going to get to the truth when you have that many people involved. So I'm looking forward to whatever comes out through hopeful grand jury testimony of these folks.
Yeah, me too. All right, everybody, that is the news. We're going to be right back just after this quick break with the good news. Stick around.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody, it's AG, and 2 of my favorite things are laughing and sleep. So let's start with laughing. This is something that you need. You need news that is smart, funny, inspiring. You need the Final Word podcast with Frangela. America's BFFs will keep you informed and energized while you #resist with new podcasts out every Wednesday. Then get your laugh on with new episodes of Frangela's Hysterical Idiot of the Week podcast, where Frangela fights one smooth brain story at a time. Check out the Final Word and Idiot of the Week on MSW Media and the Sexy Liberal Podcast Network every week, and follow @Frangela Duo on all your social media today. And then the sleep part. I used to not be able to sleep very well, as you know. I used to toss and turn. I thought it was anxiety, but I was sleeping on a mattress made for someone else. But that's when Helix came to my rescue, because with Helix, you're getting a mattress that you know will be perfect for the way you sleep. Everyone's unique, and Helix knows that, so they have several different mattress models to choose from. Soft, medium, firm. Mattress is great for cooling you down. They even have a Helix Plus mattress for plus-size sleepers. I took their 2-minute online sleep quiz, And my perfect mattress is the Helix Midnight because I'm a side sleeper and I like a medium firm bed. It is super comfortable. I love it. I get the best night's sleep of my life. Plus, Helix was awarded #1 best overall mattress pick of 2020 by GQ and Wired Magazine. Helix has been recommended by multiple leading chiropractors as a go-to solution for improving your sleep and, waking up without aches and pains. So go to helixsleep.com/dailybeans. Take their 2-minute online sleep quiz. They'll match you to a customized mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. It ships for free, comes with a 10-year warranty. You get to try it out for 100 sleeps risk-free, and if you don't love it, they'll come pick it up and give you a full refund. They even have financing options available at Helix, so a good night's sleep is never far away. Right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for listeners at helixsleep.com/dailybeans. That's Helix Sleep, HELIX sleep.com/dailybeans for up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. Everybody, welcome back. It's time for the good news.
Who likes good news? Everyone? Then good news, everyone!
Good news, good news. And if you have any good news, corrections, confessions, Halloween photos, whoopee stories, you want to play What the Mutt, that's where you send in your rescue dog, and I try to really badly guess what breeds your dog is. If you want to play Find a Cat, any photos, seriously, send everything you want, anything you could possibly think of. You can send it in to us at dailybeanspod.com and click on Contact. I'm going to kick us off, Pete, with a submission from Carolyn, pronouns she and her. So this is more sharing Halloween photos than good news, but I do have some good news too. I'm going on vacation at the end of the week. We have an epic road trip planned from Portland, I love Portland, through Western Canada,
Fantastic.
which I'm very excited about. Oh, that's so cool. But onto the Halloween photos. My husband and I had 2 solid years of teamwork. That's fucking teamwork. I love it. In crafting Halloween costumes for our kids, the most epic of which were the LED projects. Whoa! The LED projects we took on. The first year, we attempted to emulate Taylor Swift's LED dress from the 1989 tour, worn to the song How You Get the Girl. It was loads of fun, although it didn't last the night with the stress that, walking put on the wires. The next year, we learned our lesson and created a light-up jellyfish costume instead. There were other problems with that, but definitely caught the crowd's eye as we wandered through Disneyland. I wish I could post videos. Look at these. Look at the jellyfish.
Oh, it's fantastic. And even the dress. I mean, they were making it sound they didn't do a good job, but it's fantastic. She's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 easily long strings of LEDs under a fantastic dress lit up with a big bowl full of those nerds, which would be my favorite. But no, it's spectacular. And then the
nerds are your favorite?
They are. As far as like hard candy goes, if I went to chocolate, I'd probably have to go with the Reese's. But nerds, when it comes to just sugar candy, nerds are spectacular. So, and
yeah, they are good.
It's wonderful. All right.
Now you go ahead and take the next 2 because this
yeah,
one's
absolutely.
Pretty short.
So I have Mrs. M, she, her, simply sent a picture of Maisie in the moment, and Maisie is looks like a lab on a bed of violets, or at least violet-covered flowers, simply absolutely enjoying the moment outside, slightly overcast day with a beautiful big dog smile and a little blip of tongue coming out. It looks, this is a good thing to do on the show because it decompresses all the anger and agita of the earlier portion of the show. I can understand why you do it now, but Maisie's just lovely.
Pete, you are really good at describing photos. I love this. Thank you. Go ahead and take the next one too, because that one was pretty short.
Yeah, so Kate, she, her, says, "Good morning, Bean Queens," which I don't be a temporary king or something, but I've been so blessed the past few months that I couldn't help but share my joy. I will be completing my Master's of Nursing degree in the next few weeks with honors. Congratulations. And I've already been offered my goal job of becoming part of the nursing faculty at Kauai Community College. Being that is the only place on island to obtain this dream job, it was a bit nerve-wracking waiting to hear. Even more exciting, with the pandemic over, I've finally had the opportunity since moving to Kauai to become a coach for our Westside Youth Girls Basketball Club and volunteer with our Kauai Girl Scouts. My true passion is working with young people, just a silly auntie that tries to show them that we can be responsible and still have fun too, as demonstrated by my pole dancing unicorn tattoo. But it's a lovely photo of the pole dancing tattoo. But it continues One of my favorite moments so far was learning that one of my players identifies as bisexual, and when I asked them what pronoun they would prefer, they teared up as they had never so casually been asked that. I hugged them and, not to brag, have never felt like a better role model than at that moment. I included a picture of my sweet tattoo and pet tax of my even sweeter boys caught in WrestleMania mode, Kai in gray and Nalu in orange, which in Hawaiian mean ocean and wave, aka my favorite place in the world. Also included my favorite picture of Nalu. If pure joy had a face, that is it. Or is he stoned? LOL. Aloha and mahalo for all that you do. Yes, queens and kings. And there is indeed a pole dancing unicorn with gloriously flowing rainbow mane and tail. And then their cats, the two, I guess, are go back and find the names. Nalu and Kai and Gray, wrestling and playing on the floor and sleeping, which is spectacular.
Oh, hi, kitty. I love Kauai. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite islands.
I've never been. Oahu is it, and I've heard you got to get off Oahu and see everything else that.
Yep, Kauai and then Maui and then Big Island are tied for first place for me. But no, I absolutely love Kauai. It's like more like extreme, like ziplining jungle, like hiking mountains, like the Jurassic Park is fun. Like it's if you do you can go down tubing down the old sugar plantation water aqueducts, and it's absolutely beautiful and super fun. All right, I'm gonna take the last two here. I'll just do this. From Lisa, pronoun she and her, happy place. This is my home office. I sent a question or comment, Spiro Agnew, and wanted to send a pet pic. These are my good babies, Wes and Thena. I won't ask you to name the mutt. You can't mistake them. No, they are not related. Look at these German Shepherd dogs.
Yeah, fantastic.
They're so regal.
Absolutely. One ear's perked up, looking, the other one kind of ears back. I don't know if that's mellower, but both clearly looking at something off screen. I would imagine food, but who knows?
Maybe a bird.
They're lovely. Absolutely beautiful.
Very, very good dogs. Dogs know.
And I always say, why always good dog? Why not great dog? So they're great dogs.
Good boy. Good boy. And Major Biden knew, right? He knew. And finally, from anonymous pronoun she and her, hello, ladies. And Pete, I love your show. I listen every morning as I get ready for work. When Donna Summer starts singing, I look in the mirror to lip sync the hot notes part and I giggle. Okay. Thank you so much, because I'm so proud of the hot notes stinger. If you haven't heard it, Pete, it's Donna Summer, and she's like, looking for some, and then my voice comes in and just goes, hot notes, baby, this evening. I made it 5 years ago, and I still love it. The good news is this life-changing decision my husband and I made last year. We needed to start planning for retirement. We realized we could not do it if we stayed where we were. So after 26 years of teaching, I quit. It was an easy decision to make. I was burned out and not feeling appreciated. We sold our big expensive house in the crowded suburbs and downsized to a simple ranch on an acre of land in the mountains. Oh, that sounds so delightful.
Yeah.
Recently, I was hired as the DMV clerk for my small village. As an educator, it's my nature to inform and help. I really enjoy helping customers with what they need to get their driver's license, title, and register their vehicles, and help them with their motor vehicle needs. As we all know, this is no easy task. It is a good feeling when my customers say, this is the best DMV experience I've ever had. And you know what? I love this because when I started working at the VA, we didn't really have a reputation for having the most friendly customer service. So I was like, it's going to be really easy to wow everybody, just a little bit of kindness. And when you're over the top, like Anonymous is here, it's got to be such a breath of fresh air, especially at the DMV. I'm getting compliments from the community, and it feels so good to be appreciated. Making this move was the best decision we've ever made. For my pet tax, I give you my 3 boys. Keep up the good fight. Look at the doves.
Oh, those boys are spectacular. And an acre in the mountains sounds spectacular right now. I've always figured if I retire, I want to go to more wide open spaces. So leaving the suburbs and going to a ranch on an acre of land sounds spectacular. But those dogs it looks like a dachshund. It may not be a dachshund, but they're two just with striking brown eyes. I mean, the eyes are remarkable on this.
I think the middle one is a Vizsla,
fell
right?
up front. Yeah, I think that's right. But gorgeous boys. It's
Oh, and the little guy in the back. Look at with his little ears and his little gray snout. So cute. Oh, thank you everyone for sending these in. And Pete, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for helping me read the good news and the not so good news up front. Actually, it was pretty good news today up front. We got some really good.
Agreed. Progress, right? Noticeable, visible progress, which I think hopefully reassures people, settles people. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, just to see a headline, Department of Justice investigating Trump. It's like, oh, thank you. I've been waiting for that. I've been saying it, and people have been calling me crazy. But now we finally have some, Washington Post backs me up today. So if you have any good news, confessions, corrections, anything you want to send us, you can do so by going to dailybeanspod.com and clicking on contact. And, Pete, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
No, can't wait to see what inevitably there's going to be the chasing New York Times article into the Washington Post where they feel compelled to hit their sources for a little more. So I am looking forward to see, much like Liz Cheney said, the dam is beginning to break. I assume with this news cycle, there is more to come. So we'll see. Yeah. Tune in tomorrow, right?
Yes, and we will be back tomorrow. Until then, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health. Vote blue over Q. I've been AG.
And I'm Pete.
Them's the beans. The Daily Beans is written and executive produced by Allison Gill with additional research and reporting by Dana Goldberg and Aimee Carrero. Sound design and editing is by Desiree McFarlane, with art and web design by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios. Music for The Daily Beans is written and performed by They Might Be Giants, and the show is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, please visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.